For CB1.
CB2,
Valerie Delrosa here for CB2.
CB3, I don't see with us. CB4,
CB4, Leslie Bogosian Murphy.
thanks Leslie. CB5,
Todd Shapiro, Vice Chair of CB5.
great, thank you for being here. CB6,
Sandy McKee, CB6.
CB7,
Every number you, CB7.
CB8,
Valerie Mason, CB8, good morning.
CB9.
Victor Edwards for CB9.
I don't think we have anybody from CB10. CB11 should be joining us virtually if they're not already on. Nope, not yet. And Catherine is here for CB12, right?
Correct. Good morning.
Okay, Catherine. All right, I will start off the meeting with a motion to adopt this month's agenda.
Motion.
Motion seconded.
Second.
Thanks. All in favor?
Yes.
Any questions, concerns, no's? I will then move on to adopting our Borough Board minutes that were sent over. I think there were just a couple edits, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to edit the remarks for CB7. There's a sentence that says, "We approved the first 5 period," which I would like amended to say, "We approved the first 5 dining out New York applications."
Okay, thank you. And Sandy?
Just instead of innovations, it's Innovation East.
Innovation.
Is the name of the project, but that's up for you.
Okay, I've got both of those. I think with that, can I get a motion to approve the board minutes with these revisions?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna abstain because I was absent even though I got through 3/4 of the video.
Got it. Thank you. All right. Our borough president will be joining us in just a few minutes, so I will skip over the borough president's report. As I mentioned to a few people, I think, with coming back from the summer, I think half of the boards have met, wanted to keep this meeting light and easy. But I did want to mention, since we don't have a presentation this month, I am happy to continue to solicit any feedback in terms of who you do want for our presenters, and we'll do our best. So if there's anyone top of mind, I know folks are talking about open restaurants and cannabis, so certainly those are always a priority for us, but if there's any other agencies or organizations that you think should be presenting to us, either you want to share it now or email it to me at a later time, I'm happy to do my best for that. Yeah. Todd.
I'd love to hear somebody from the sheriff's office or the DA's office or the NYPD giving us an update on the methodology and results of their enforcement.
Specific to cannabis?
Cannabis.
And on the same, I'd like that to be paired with the Cannabis Control Board, whose current resolutions to speak to the community board about their resolutions on community board involvement and the 1,000-foot rule that they're looking to provide waivers for.
And I just have one other comment.
Sure.
It would be great if we could, get somebody from the DOT to come here and speak to the issue of how, when they grant the licenses, they deal with the holistic aspect of granting multiple licenses on the same street, whether or not there's anything that they do consider when they grant the licenses. Well, we know it, but I'd like to hear how they view it.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to share now? Otherwise, feel free to reach out at a later time.
Okay.
Great. Thank you for that feedback. I think with that, I'll move right into chair reports. So 9th month, CB9, you are up. I didn't give the coffee a chance to kick in yet.
It's like ordering food at a table.
Good morning, all. Welcome back. This last month, my apologies. August 28th, Community Board 9 held a back to school event where we gave out over 200 backpacks for local kids at the 2 housing developments in the area. Great success, something to look forward to having that. We've been, myself and Barry Weinberg, my first vice chair, have been meeting with State Senator Eau Claire regarding her amendment to roll back certain aspects of Columbia's expansion into West Harlem. Her bill was to halt it totally. Over the last 4 months, we talked about kind of amending it. I manage the community benefits agreement for that part of it, and we've seen a lot of great things out of that. So we're looking to just enhance that and also include some residential housing. As they build housing for the university, they are taking away housing for people who live in that area. We're just looking to try to incorporate 2 together. So that's been ongoing. Probably meeting for the last 5 months each Friday with state senators. So we're making some progress there. September 9th, I met with NYPD at a luncheon down here with the first deputy commissioner. Ward 12 was there as well. And we spoke about issues concerning the various community boards. 3 of the main ones was cannabis. The other one was scooters and e-bikes. That's just rampant. I had the pleasure of sitting next to Mayor's senior advisor, Ingrid. And on my other side was the Borough president and the first deputy commissioner. And I talked about those issues in particular. And I'm a bike rider, but I ride mostly the greenways along the Hudson. And e-bikes and scooters are allowed there, and I've seen several accidents. So I'm just trying to take that back. It's like
They're not allowed.
that's what Mayor's office said. Okay.
Mayor's office is incorrect. They're legal on city
Right.
bikeways. The West Side Greenway
It's
is
not allowed.
state DOT.
Okay. Hopefully that's.
You would think they would be leaving the way it
The way I
runs,
see
but
it,
yes.
yes. So, but lunch was good. It was successful. They got to hear a lot of different views. This afternoon, I had a conference call with Commissioner Tisch from sanitation to talk about the pilot containerization program that we have in our district that's going along fairly well. Some bumps in the road, little lack of transparency with sanitation, but I think we're kind of getting to a better place with that. So that's positive. Definitely less rats. Parking for drivers still an issue. I think the new variation will really help because the brownstones and smaller buildings can have the wheelie parts that you won't have a big container in the street. So that has helped. Last Monday, this past Monday, City Council hearing on rezoning one of our areas over the Hudson lines to allow building a cantilever building.
Was this 135th?
135th.
Yes, okay.
Which we strongly oppose because first it's in a floodplain, one thing. And secondly, we're just afraid of accidents that could happen with the rail tracks. So we pushed back against that. We had several people testifying there, so we're hoping to follow up with that. Next Monday, we're having orientation for new board members, trying to remind them and our own members in person because of the quorum for voting. We still have people who think it's hybrid, and just show up on screen and like, I'm here, I'm like, no, you're not. Not yet. So just try to remind people to do that and push forward. And that's about it for CD9 next Monday. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Rick. We're joined by our borough president. How are you?
Hey, guys.
Morning.
So not sure if you want to settle in.
Sure. No, I'll be happy to jump through the speaking order.
Okay.
Only because I have to head out momentarily to a rally for public bathrooms in New York. That's indeed the issue that unites us all. There are a couple more bills that we're promoting, one of which would require the city to find public buildings where they already have a restroom and they should just open it. Imagine like a waiting room for an office where you go to sign up for something. And it could just be promoted as open to the public. It wouldn't cost the city anything. And we think there might be hundreds of locations around the 5 boroughs where you could safely do that. So gonna be a fun rally. But a couple other policy points that we focused on. The first is the epidemic of fake, obscured, and missing license plates that you've all seen on the street. It's getting worse. Walk down any block, you see it. You know that it started around the time they moved tolling to Easy Pass. It's only accelerated as we have more red light and speed cameras. And it's impacting our safety because people who have no plates or fake plates know they can run red lights and speed with impunity, and they do. It's also costing us, we estimate probably 200 million a year in revenue in tolls and fines and fees, et cetera. And it's just plain wrong. So we put out an agenda to try and address this. First, there's got to be stiffer enforcement and tougher penalties. If your car is seen on the street with a fake license plate, car should be booted or impounded. If you are driving with a fake plate or a hidden plate, you should get points on your license. That will change behavior. It's not happening enough yet, although more than it used to. It should be much harder to acquire these devices. You might have seen them, like something out of James Bond, a little screen drops down with the touch of a button. This is incredible, but they're very easy to buy right now online. They are illegal to sell in New York City. But we did a search and we found on TikTok and Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, people selling them with addresses in the 5 boroughs. We did a search 2 weeks ago. This has been illegal to sell in the 5 boroughs of New York City since 2022. So we wrote a letter to those 3 platforms I mentioned. And actually, I just learned yesterday that TikTok has now taken down all the sellers. So we're very happy about that. And we're waiting now on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. But we got to do something because this is out of control. Secondly, we're about to enter a new era of composting in the borough of Manhattan. We are catching up to the rest of the city. Yes, until now in Manhattan, you've only had 2 ways to dispose of your organic waste. One is to take it to a wonderful community compost program. We love them. They're still important. 2 is to drop it off in one of these very popular orange bins. You've seen them around. They're often overflowing. They're not enough. And at any rate, they're not as convenient as being able to do it in the comfort of your own home. And that is going to be the new option. Beginning October 6th, buildings are going to be required to separate out organics, just like they do paper and plastic and bottles for recycling. Buildings are going to be required to have brown bins of a certain specification, which, by the way, you can get for free from the city through October 28th. So particularly for small building owners, that's going to be a help. You can also buy certified bins, which I think they cost definitely under $100. I don't know what it is, maybe $60 or something. But for now, you can get one for free. But we got a huge education challenge ahead of us because most people in the city have no idea this law is coming. Most people have never separated out organics, they've never done composting. It's why we're behind other cities in the world, most other cities, in diverting organics from the waste stream. As a reminder, this is a climate change issue because when organics end up in landfills, they decompose, they release methane, which is a greenhouse gas. Much better to divert them into a green use, like creating fertilizer for gardens. And also it would be a win for our battle against rats, because when you have food in plastic trash bags, rats tend to gnaw through that and get dinner. And when they're in a sealed rat-proof container, which is what these brown bins are, you're depriving rats of a food supply. So there's also a quality of life angle here in New York. So we're trying to do a lot of education on this. I think community boards, being that you're on the front lines, have a big role in doing that. I hope you also help to get the word out, both to building owners in some neighborhoods like CB9, you have a lot of small building owners that probably have to worry about this. In many of your districts, the owners are more sophisticated, they're larger, they got hundreds of apartments. So you're really focusing on the residents, but at any rate, there's a lot of education to do. Lastly, I'll mention that we're starting another round of courses and trainings for community board members. These have been very popular in the past. Some of them are mandated. So we have mandated courses in equal employment opportunity, conflicts of interest, and implicit bias. But we're very proud to have also created curricula that is not mandatory, but is, we think, very useful. And tell us, Eric, what are the upcoming courses on?
So we have some on using data that we've worked with Beta NYC on. We have land use trainings. We're trying to see if we can get IBO to talk about how to, filter through information as you make your community needs statements, and a few other ones. We're hoping to have a couple more fun ones involved, but I want to thank Porfirio who spearheads this for us. We're still trying to finalize it, but.
Good, thank you. That's it for me, guys. Now I have to go fight for public bathrooms. Right, nice to see all of you. Have a great borough board meeting. All right, be well. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
I will just add that the leadership training series tentatively is planned for the last week in October. So we're thinking October 28th to November 2nd, I believe is that week. And we have trainings both in the afternoon and evenings. They're also recorded and up on our website and on YouTube in case you miss one of the non-mandatory ones and just want to catch up on, our land use walkthrough or one of the other ones. Yeah.
Are the mandatory ones annually or biannually?
They are annual. They're annual.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to be clear, the mandatory ones, everybody's got to do it every year, every.
Correct.
It's every.
Yeah.
Are the trainings still open to the public? Like the way that we saw the other?
Yeah, they still are.
I found that to be a great recruitment tool to get people to apply. 'Cause they
Nice.
learn about what.
Yeah, we still do advertise them as well on like link, on the link system and stuff like that to get it out there.
Can you do the trainings by a Zoom or in person?
They're all being done virtually. Sorry, Sandy? Yeah.
Do you have previous trainings that people can access? Because for instance, our public forum for the budget request is in October. And we'd really like to get people, especially in a lot of.
Yeah, so we have our budget team that did a training last year. I don't know if it was super specific to district needs, but I will double check that. But it should be on our YouTube page.
If you wouldn't mind having the team send that link around to everybody.
Of the previous
Yeah,
trainings.
to be widely distributed, I think that would be really awesome.
Sure.
I also think that I would love to see beyond the CB, but a public forum that the borough president does to explain how city budgets work, because the average New Yorker does not actually understand that. It's part of my report, but I'm going to break out just the part that I'm looking for. It would be really good for people to understand what the city looks at for data to understand how to effectuate change with budget. For example, people need to understand that if there's a hotspot as defined by NYPD, that's going to get more trouble, more attention. But how does NYPD find that hotspot? And that comes through 911 calls, 311 calls, coordination efforts. And I think that that's not widely understood. And you see that when people come, for example, to complain about a liquor license, right? And we educate them, did you call 911? Did you call 311? If this bar, restaurant, whatever has been an issue for the neighborhood, coming just to the community board meeting once to say something doesn't actually help. You need to go through the process of how the city views constituency.
Yeah.
Complaints.
And I know that there's a lot of frustration over how long that process can take. I mean, I can say, Victor, I know we were working on one in CB9. I think it was like a billiard bar spot that had, and still working on it, but it has been shut down at times. Like it's a process, but it does happen.
To Tammy's point, it's the public knows the process, they understand that we can't just go and knock the
Exactly.
door, they have to To the
Yes.
city.
And
I'd like to second that because in all of our community meetings and our public meetings on the due diligence, it's so important that our citizens in our districts understand that they've got to report these things,
Mhm.
not just once, but as good citizens over a period of time. So that's going to impact the budget. And, that's the evidence that we need for to keep rein these people.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just, as a veteran of OMB myself, I think all of this data-driven attention is important, but that's always basically within the current budgeted amount. It very seldom rises to the level of bringing more money to a particular function. And the process of how the city determines its budget is much more of a political scrum than anything that is database, frankly. And there is a process and there are ways to influence it, but I'm not sure even where you would get anybody who could honestly give you that kind of insight.
That's all helpful. Thank you. Really appreciate it. So we're joined by Marquise. Good to see you. Not to put you on the spot, but we are going through chair reports and you were up next, so.
Your timing is.
If you need a minute, we can always come back.
I have a minute, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All good. Xavier, are you available to give a report remotely?
I am listening and I need a little bit of time. I apologize, everyone. I just had an urgent visit to my wife's
No,
aunt
no
who's
worries.
nearly 88. So I'll circle back. That'd be
No
great.
problem. I will pass it to Catherine, if Catherine's available.
Yeah, good morning. I'll report something. Morning everyone. Welcome back to session. I hope it was smooth for folks. At CB12, I know, Victor shared a little bit, but definitely have been making our way around different events. So there was like the NYPD luncheon. I want to say it was Monday. Yeah, Monday at this point. The Washington Bridge on 181st has completed its improvements with DOT that they were making. So it'll be interesting to see just kind of like how traffic is affected, how pedestrian traffic is used there on the bridge, and just kind of like the impact of that in the coming weeks. I'll also add actually, and this is a IOU, so I think I might want to spend a little bit more of the reporting back time here. We at our executive committee this month looked at the results of our member survey. So I can't see everyone who's there, but if you're newer to a borough board, the team and I started working on an annual member survey. And it's just something that, our board's never done, that we were really curious of, right? Just in terms of, how folks feel, kind of like a regular job, right? Like you have your exit interview, but we never really have that. And finding that even though, as chairs, for example, we may have really great relationships with some of our members, sometimes that feedback just isn't coming through, right, in terms of what their experiences are at committee, and just out of, they don't want to necessarily feel like they're, how should I say it, painting somebody in a bad light or, things like that. So anyway, so we decided to do this survey, which folks are able to do anonymously. And so the gist of it, I'll just say, is we matched, for example, the demographic data collected from the borough president's office, because we were, of course, super interested in terms of how people's experiences land on community boards across different demographic groups. And then we had committee chairs. Essentially, we asked folks what their roles are, right? So if you're committee chair, assistant chair, you're just the member, or if you're an elected officer. And then we had some tailored questions and branching set up based on that. And so we had committee chairs really reflect on, how they feel as a meeting facilitator. That was one core area that we saw, that we wanted to understand if it matched, for example, a committee member's experience or, for example, an agency's experience when coming to present to a committee. We also had them talk about what the collaboration is with the office, what they need, do they get everything on time, what do they want to understand better about their working relationship with our community board office and staff. And then I think in terms of the last piece, if I'm sorry, I'm flipping through like 40 pages right now, is how do they what do they need, right, to be better committee chairs? And I'll just say, we didn't get the numbers that we wanted. And we're gonna keep it open to try to get more folks to respond. This is based off of about roughly half the board. But given we had a new set of members join in June who weren't necessarily quite eligible for this, I would say it's a little bit more like 60% of our board was able to complete it. And the feedback was great, right? Like folks for the most part are satisfactory with their committees, with the work I should say at committees and with the board in general, and are happy to continue to be on the board. So it was really good to kind of not see a big or a disproportionate balance between the comments from our committee chairs or assistant chairs and those of our members who sit on them. I'll say also, like, folks are eager to do more and looking for the best ways to do that, right? So meaning like, I want to be able to do more community engagement work. I want to be able to kind of organize more events just between members. And while we have some of those efforts going, it's really kind of trying to figure out what's the easiest way to get kind of people plugged into those, right? That's just not another email. I think as boards, we tend to be very heavy reliantly on emails, and we're looking for other strategies that can kind of help tap into people's motivation. So I'll say the other thing too that we're working on at exec is really, and this is really with the framework of like, we have a significant number of members who hold so much historical knowledge and are realizing like they only have one more term based on term limits, right? So by 2027, a lot of the senior members on our board who know processes really well, not just like Robert's Rule of Order, but just like all of that historical knowledge, are leaving. And so now is really a great time for us to really try to kind of institutionalize different practices. And so some of those I noticed that other boards actually do have. So like, for example, a handbook, like what does it mean to be a chair? What does it mean to be a vice chair? And really trying to embed some of those like day-to-day, or I should say kind of like foundational things, right? When you run a land use committee or when you run a licensing committee. And so a lot of that for us has been kind of more ad hoc, right? Like people just kind of learn by going and by sticking around. But there is a big need to be able to kind of document that and like share best practices. So we did it as a Survey Monkey. What I can do is download the PDF of the questions. If you're interested in aggregate data, I'm happy to share that with all of all of you guys, including MBPO. And I don't know if this is something that other boards have done, but we're very committed. We think it's a model that with very few tweaks that our board can implement every single year. So I will say that's been a big chunk of what this month has been. And then I'll add also, we did get a reso, I think it's Bronx CB8, voted about the quorum at the Senate. Just, I forget the number of the bill. I can forward that out if folks don't have it already. But essentially dropping quorum to be a quarter for in person. And I think this is old, but it seems like, and I'm not clear yet if there is some traction in terms of this making it to the assembly or a potential vote this year. So that's something where we didn't get to necessarily prep a resolution for this month, but do kind of want to get an understanding of like where that bill lies and be able to kind of have a stance on that. So I'll leave it there. If you want more district updates, definitely feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Catherine. Appreciate it. Sounds like you've been really busy with that, and it sounds like a great survey you've been doing. I'll look forward to taking a look at it. One thing that Catherine did mention, which as I mentioned, Porfirio and I are trying to finalize our trainings. We haven't finalized every single one yet, but some of the things that we are looking to do is, as you were saying, with concern over term limits, we're trying to find presenters who can really speak to transferring, how do you build new leadership? How do you transfer institutional knowledge? We're talking to a couple of like business schools to see in the CUNY system to see if maybe they can do a presentation on that. Because I feel like over the next few years, that's probably going to be a focus for a lot of boards. So hoping that happens.
There could, I mean, I know the Urban Fellow programs have been coming up, but one of the projects I was wondering is if the borough president would look at an Urban Fellow thing to update the rules and regs around community boards. It hasn't been done in, I think, like 5 administrations. So things are very different today in a post-COVID world. There are different rules, different regs, and really there is a community board handbook that we had, but it's so outdated that I'd love to see if maybe the borough president would take that up. It would be onerous for the individual boards without resource.
Making a note of it. I'm going to talk to the team, but thank you.
I can share with you what
The info from Urban Fellows.
I can share with you the manual that we can.
Great. Thank you. All right. Good time.
Okay,
Good.
yeah, I'll be very brief. CB10, for the most part during the summer, we only have a few committees that meet, so September, we kind of just getting back into the flow of things. But right now, we're heavily focused on, our district needs, obviously. And we are putting together, we have a survey and many things that we're doing around the community, and also having planned some major forums for our community to weigh in around our district needs. One of the major things that have come so far, and we are awaiting an active letter writing campaign, is that several schools within our district have lost after school programs. And this is something that was major, in which, over the last year, we built a very good relationship with the school district that service our district and community board town. So principals have contacted us. We sent a letter to the governor, to the borough president, to the mayor, every elected official. We're actually calling for a task force to figure out what's actually happening in our district in regards to also the enrollment is also connected to some of this, why we're losing so much. And so we've been heavily focused this month on just kind of pushing that, and we're in the middle of strategizing how we can bring more attention to this issue around funding after school programs in our district and why that money has disappeared. That's all I have for today.
Great. Thanks, Mark. I will pass it to Tammy.
Hey, I apologize for missing August. It's August brain at CB1, so I'll say I'm sorry. So you can get a little bit of a longer update. In July, we really started to take a look and focusing on our concerns about the reduction of pedestrian priority on our sidewalks. And we say that because we've noticed that in every conversation that we have with a variety of different agencies, there's more additions to the sidewalk space. Whether they are considered street furniture or not is immaterial from our perspective, because you're working around, especially in the historic district, some streets have cobblestone on sidewalks, or we have the, like in the historic districts, you have the below ground, so the sidewalks have the see-through or the, clearly I don't have enough vocabulary this morning, or, the below ground basements. So when the e-bike battery storage cabinets came up to go on the sidewalks, our perspective was, again, why something else on the sidewalk? And B, why aren't we using the parking spaces to put a bike rack and a charging cabinet? And that way the bikes aren't on the sidewalk, no one has to get through the sidewalk, and it gives the bicyclists and pedestrians in equal footing. Bicycles go where they're supposed to be off the sidewalk and the pedestrian space is reserved. Then you come down and now that was in July and August, and now we have the 5G towers, which are 32 foot tall on the sidewalks. And the really interesting thing about the 5G towers to us is they're not required really, unless you sign yourself up to be a consulting party as a community board, which I don't think everybody knew that they should. So I am recommending that everybody does. You don't know that they're coming. You don't have an opportunity to weigh in. They don't actually have all the bids either signed up as consulting parties. They note in the paperwork that it might be within a bid, but the bid doesn't know either. So we have a building last night who was talking to us about construction impacts for things because they're going under a major renovation. They have lots of plans, and I asked them, I said, did you know that there's a 32 foot tower being proposed along the side of your building on the sidewalk? And they were absolutely gobsmacked. And they're going through a construction project now, changing everything on the exterior. Perhaps if it did get installed, they would not have, they might move a window one way or the other. It's just the lack of information and transparency with it when it comes to the public space is very disconcerting. And the use of our sidewalks or other additional things other than pedestrians, when we're not even working on accessibility as a primary, is really strange. You can't actually claim that the city is for all users unless we are really looking at all users as the first priority and then the furniture that we put in as second. So I'm pleased to announce that the state DOT is doing a study of 9A. We are really excited, and that goes CB 1, 2, and 4. So my colleagues, I'm sure, are very excited. Hudson River Park Trust is excited. It'll go from the Battery to 59th Street and looking at everything. We are also going to start to advocate for bus service, because if you are in downtown, you came off the Staten Island Ferry, let's just say, and you wanted to go up into CB4 or CB2, all the way over on the west side, you have to walk from 8th. There's no buses and no subways that get you any further west than 8th, south of 14th Street. So we think that that's, based on how the city is built out, we think that's a huge omission. So we're doing a resolution to ask them to put that in their study, which they're looking at resiliency, variety of uses, and hopefully that will also include in their 2-year study the effect of Lower Manhattan, south of Canal, will turn into a slow zone by the end of this year. So the speed limit, which is currently 30, for example, on the West Side Highway, will drop down to 20 or 25. Which is interesting because then the bicyclists and the e-bikes can go faster than the cars.
Just like the rest of the city.
Yeah, so I'm super psyched that Mike's at the public restroom rally because it's something that we hugely support. There cannot possibly be enough public restrooms anywhere. If they put in 1,000 tomorrow, it would still not take a chunk out of the need that we have. We love our tourists. We want them to find accessible places to go. It'd be perhaps a lot better for the homeless as well if they had places that they could use the bathroom. So we'll go with that. Northwest Resiliency is a project that the public hearing for the draft environmental impact was last night. The public comment is open till October 7th. If you visit any of the parks south of Northmore, which is the Hudson River Park Trust, anything in Battery Park City, all the way down to the Battery, please take a look at it. Please look at all the changes they're making for resiliency. There is no impact that we know of that they've studied of what that does to push anything further north. That's one of our big comments and concerns. Unfortunately, due to the timing, we actually had to go back out and hire an urban planner consultant to help us get through it, because there's no way we could get through the hundreds and hundreds of pages. We just don't have the bandwidth, and it was released in the end of August. And then lastly, we're having a grand old time with DHS and a HERC site. DHS is opening a shelter, which we supported, a safe haven shelter at a location on Washington Street. There's a HERC site on the same block that isn't a hotel. And the meeting of the two has been problematic. The public does not understand why they're not related, that one's permanent, one's temporary. The public just sees the effect on their street where they live. So there's a lot of difficulty in managing the, okay, well, they call 911 or they call 311, the police are completely understaffed. We don't even have crossing guards, let alone safety agents and people who can respond in a timely manner. The NCO program should have been great to help that, but when they're pulled off for protests and trials and other stuff, it's very, very difficult to get a fast response time. And then DHS announced on the last days of, I spoke about this in July. They dropped an announcement that they were opening a safe haven shelter attached to a pre-K to 5th grade. I mean, no one's arguing that we need shelters. No one's saying we don't want a shelter. What we don't want is a safe haven shelter where the front door of the shelter is 10 feet from the door for the school that lines up the pre-K kids. And they are said, well, we'll work with you. So there's, they're not allowed to smoke in the outdoor courtyard during school hours. Well, that would be 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. If you get that, then where are they going to smoke? They're going to walk outside and smoke outside the facility, still underneath the school that was attached to. And having the conversation has been really difficult. It's a school that warmly welcomed dozens and dozens of migrant families and has a support system for homeless kids. And we keep being told that this building cannot be made for families. It can't be made for, this, that. It has to be a safe haven. And no one in the community, not the council member nor the community board, understand why you would actually choose a building that's attached to a school, that the windows look into the school and the school looks, they can look into the school back and forth, to put a safe haven type shelter. And we said, there is need. We said, is DHS not going to open any other type of shelter? Have you fixed homeless families? Have you fixed single women? Have you fixed vets? Have you fixed homeless over the age of 60? Something, anything other than a safe haven drug treatment center attached to a school. And so we were in this room last night. We ran out of chairs. So look around you, all the chairs were used. It was standing room only. It was rough. And we just started giving out the deputy mayor's name, because at this point, there's not much more the community board can do. We raised all the concerns and issues and they said, we'll mitigate. But the reality is, if the school was built there after the shelter was there, then the school would have been built differently. And there would have been different accommodations made on how you built the school to accommodate being next door. And those kind of considerations are not actually being done. So it doesn't make the community really comfortable. We're like, absolutely, we'll take a shelter. We want to help people. But this type of shelter at this location is not great. And in fact, they were like, let's just turn the hotel into a migrant shelter, because we already have all the families. And you're allowed to have migrant families in shelters that are hotels that don't have kitchens, where you're not allowed to have a permanent shelter in a former hotel that doesn't have kitchens. So we're like, great, turn it into a migrant shelter then. I mean, how many communities do you have that are like, yeah, let's do that instead? It's really sort of comical in a way that there's absolutely like deadpan, oh, no, it'll be fine. But there's no way it can be fine, because there's not the infrastructure to make it fine. So that was a 4.5 hour meeting here last night. And yeah, lots of fun. Oh, and 5G towers.
Yeah.
We have 8 locations that are proposed. We've heard it in 3, our third committee is Monday. So we did it in land use to explain the economic impacts of what happened and to announce that we signed on to be a consulting party, so everybody knew. We went over the financial requirements that they have for siting. This board, our board believes that since 90% are supposed to go north of 96th Street and in the boroughs, that should be the priority first, period, end of statement. This neighborhood is not a desert in terms of connectivity. And so we think that the focus should be on the underserved neighborhoods first and foremost to get the true 90% rollout in all of those before you start coming into other neighborhoods south of 96th Street.
Can I just ask you a quick question about that? I mean, are the ones that are proposed with advertising or without advertising? Because that sort of makes the priority, because they want the eyes on the advert.
6 out of 8 are advertising.
That's the point. That's why you're a priority. So, I mean.
It's the word gross came up. I mean, you've got, accessibility users who are concerned. You had property owners who said, we have no idea that this is coming. It's really interesting because when you look at connectivity in the city, it would be awesome if you cited them on the edges where there is very limited service, like along, quite frankly, underneath the FDR Drive, over towards the water where the signals don't bounce well off of things versus in the middle here. I mean, I don't know of anybody who's dropping calls walking down Center Street here.
Great. Thank you, Tam. And we should chat for a little bit because we've also had conversations regarding 320 Pearl here, so.
Yeah, 105 Washington, they told us last night, by the way, is due to open next week.
Okay.
And I found both the CV handbook that was done in 2010 that I will forward to you.
Great.
By the borough president, and under Bloomberg, the parliamentary guide for New York City community boards.
A little outdated, you're right.
We have a
Thanks.
handbook that we revised last year that I can send the link there.
That would be great, and I'm happy to share that out.
We have our own, but this is the two that I'm sharing are
Yeah.
Mhm.
Bigger. Yeah.
Sure.
Tim, I think I'm always crazy. Can you speak more about this registered consultant process? Like, what does that mean? What do you do with it, Sarah?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. You can be, let me pull it up because we are just going over it. You can sign up to be. Right now, City Bridge, Link 5G, and OTI are the ones. You can sign up to be a consulting party. And I can forward the forms and everything to anybody who needs it. And that gives you notification of what's coming into your neighborhood, which is really important. The only public comment and opining that you have in the process currently is to do historic preservation concern comment form, which is a section 106. So much like Valerie was saying, like they're not in the historic district because they've gotten slapped enough times, I think, on it. But I mean, they're across the street or they're within sight lines. We saw one that is across the street and half a block down from townhouses that are landmarked and were built in the 1800s, and how they think that that's contextual because it's near staircases. Interesting.
Are those the three vendors that are doing the towers? Or
It's
there more?
the contract is through City Bridge, which are the same people who did the Link NYC. With OTI, which is the city agency. And that's it. And then they sell the towers to the carriers. So whether it's Verizon, T-Mobile,
So if each of our community boards registers as whatever the term is, a consulting, then we're gonna know about where the towers are.
Right, and that's.
You gotta get that.
CB2's done that.
Yeah, I think we are.
Yeah. It's the
Right.
only
That's
way
how we
to find
voted
out.
against 5 of them last night.
Great.
Unless you have a way of scrubbing, I guess there's public notice somewhere, I don't know.
Seems like a easier way to do it, so.
If you could send that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also if you just want to share it with me, I'll make sure to get it out. I have everyone's email so I can.
Why
Thank you.
would an OTI be required to put us on a list?
Because they don't have to.
Right.
That's a lot of things.
Thanks, guys.
It's, yeah.
Valerie, I'll pass it over to you.
Sure. Hi, I'm Valerie Del Rosa, I'm the first vice chair for CB2. We have a resolution out of our landmarks committee this month to support the restoration of the Tony Dappolito Recreation Center building and to support the building remaining the property of the city and to be devoted for a civic purpose. As you heard last month, that use, the recreation use of Tony Dappolito is being transferred to 388 Hudson. So we, from the landmarks perspective, we now have a position on that will go before our full board this evening. On outdoor dining, we hope to have more visibility into the pending application pipeline for our district and to have the support of the borough president's office on this. I understand a few months ago, there was a DOT meeting with the agency. But we are still continuing to ask for this support in order for us to plan and allocate resources to the application review and comment process. We have only had 9 applications referred to us since May, 3 of those this month. We have had lots of success in proactively working with applicants during the review period, implementing changes to the site plan and submitting that updated site plan with our comments to DOT. So we've had success in ensuring that the complete and accurate plan that, or what was agreed on with the board is actually makes it into the site plan, and then that's in the record. We have also found that 311 unauthorized restaurant complaints are the only forum for us to find out whether or not a restaurant has applied for the Dining Out NYC program. So just in looking at pulling 311 data and noticing that there was a summons issued for one that did not apply, and that in the notes to comment that it indicated that they had applied and that they were allowed to continue doing, and I don't know where those complaints came from, just kind of looking at the data. So I offer that to anyone else who's maybe looking for a backdoor look into what's coming up. We have found that since the August 3rd application deadline, that outdoor dining complaints in our district are actually down 14% year over year within the time period from August 3rd to about right now. So that's I chair our outdoor dining working group. So if anyone else on your boards is eager to be in dialogue about the process and what's worked for us, I'm happy to connect.
If you could reach out to me and Janice and myself, I'm Todd Shapiro.
Okay.
And Janice chairs our SLAP committee, Janice Young. We're very much interested.
Okay.
We have some comments and advice we can pass on to you as well.
Okay, great.
And Valerie, I can get you the contact information
great.
for
Yeah.
him and Janice.
Great. And then the last remarks for the report is I was eager to hear how other boards are scaffolding their human capital to prepare for term limits, and that's come up. And just in terms of, is there a long-term strategy committee that anyone has created for that purpose, or any leadership development strategies to identify up and coming leaders on your board? So that's been addressed. So
I can tell you that what we started doing, it's a strange one, but we started doing a lot of double co-chairs to try and train people who are vocal at the table and to bring them up and to ask current chairs who've been longstanding to drop to co-chair, to give other people, to try and give opportunities for newer board members to go. Because we traditionally don't have a ton of turnover, maybe 10% a year. And because we have a lot of long-term board members, our term limits don't kick as harshly at 2027, but they still start to. And with that, actually, what's starting to happen for us is I'm getting notification of some of our board members who've been on for a decade or more saying, I think I'm going to jump off now, and trying to capture the institutional knowledge in landmarks is the hardest one, and land use. Those are the two, I think, that are the most critical. So having an office team who can scan all the back paperwork into a Google Drive that somebody could then share when a landmarks application comes. Because I have board members who remember when the building was first landmarked 25 years ago, and somebody's going to come and tell us something, and the younger board members, newer, don't know. So that's one of the priorities that we've been focused on and trying to move actually everything into either Google Drive and then onto Airtable, so it's a little bit more searchable. And then I wanted to comment one thing about outdoor dining. There's the National Restaurant Association has statistics, right? And this was my industry. So within New York City has a higher failure rate for restaurants than the rest of the country, which is natural considering how much we have that open and close. So what the numbers on the National Restaurant Association put out was within 3 years, 50% of restaurants don't make it. Within 5 years, between 50 and 80% for New York City. We are 4 years past COVID. If you look at the numbers on what they talked about with outdoor dining, there were about 13,000 more or less between sidewalk and outdoor dining. If you look and see the current numbers that they have who applied, those numbers are pretty much in line with what with what they had said the success and failure rates for New York City were. And that doesn't even include the COVID issues. So I think that what we're seeing with the lower number that's then is expected is actually a misnomer. And I think one of the reasons why complaints could be down is because it's actually normalized. We may be looking at what is a real normalized situation of success rates for restaurants. Because we're truly 2 years past reopening, right? 4 years past the start of the pandemic, we may be really looking at what a normalized restaurant life is. 13,000 wasn't normal, that was survival mode. And I think that that's a point that's well overlooked in the dialogues. And you could be like, oh, it's too hard of a program, you know, it's too onerous. Maybe not, maybe it's just the reality of success and failure rates for the Restaurant Association.
Yeah, and I looked at the complaints over the same time period since 2020, and on average, it's down about 6.3%. So. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just,
Yeah.
first to your issue, you know, our community board, which has been very much in the news, literally, we've had a 50% turnover in the last 18 months. So our institutional memory has vaporized. So we've really had to step up whatever training, think about term limits for those of us who left. And we've done a number of things. The representatives to the bids and the various conservancies and the public-private partnerships, we made a real effort to get our new people out in the neighborhood so they begin to make the connections and have the social capital to hit the ground running and learn about our neighborhood. So that's what traditionally, you know, it was the long timers that had those roles. So now what we're doing is we're insisting that there be a primary contact and an alternate, right? So there's 2 for every 1 emissary that's going out in the neighborhood. And that's a great way of getting our new people acclimated to our neighborhood. The other thing that we're doing is we're reconsidering the qualifications for membership in all of the committees. So we're trying to create an incentive structure for people to proactively take the trainings, right? So in other words, if somebody wants to be in a certain committee, take the training, you know, show us that you did it, so that the people, you know, are conversant in all of the issues. A lot of our new people coming in have no concept of Robert's rules. They don't understand how to write a resolution. I mean, when it was 5%, you know, we could coach everybody, but when half of your people have been replaced, you know, it's really, and that's why it's great if you could get all of the back trainings up and running. You could wait, we can't wait, right? And then of course,
And I'll send out the link for that because they're already available.
and then the other thing we're doing is we just had a fantastic team building effort where we had 2 hours at a place where the new members came in, and we did team building exercises and everybody talked to each other. We were not so much concerned with that. We was 5 or 10% turnover, but we're doing a lot. We did that, and it was so successful. you've seen that our community board has been in the news, not in a good way. And now I think we're really putting that behind us. And I think that, the term limits, these kind of efforts really, we have to be on top of it.
Great. Thanks, Todd. I don't think we have anyone from CB3 with us, so I will pass it to Leslie.
Yes, Leslie Murphy, CB4. I'm first vice chair filling in for Jessica this month. You're gonna be very happy because everything that I'm going to say was already touched upon pretty much, so I could just paraphrase. Definitely the outdoor dining program, I think one of our big concerns, there's many concerns, but one of them is that the DOT specific doesn't have the capacity to support this process. And we have the second highest, I believe, capacity of outdoor dining restaurant applications after you guys. And we're concerned not only the capacity to evaluate these applications, but to enforce the now set regulations. Just DOT is just getting spread so thin, and that's our main concern. Next is illegal cannabis stores. I know pre-meeting, there was a big discussion on this. So, I mean, I can go on about this, but I'll sound like a broken record. I'm sure this has been brought up on the whack-a-mole situation that we have. And we probably share that with all of you guys. We have one unique situation where someone was closed down. They opened up literally the next month next door, and they put up a false bakery next door to that with fake muffins and stuff, and it's not really open for a bakery, but that's how they're getting around or trying to fake out. I mean, they're going to very, very extreme lengths, which shows the money that these illegal operations have to put into their,
We have a sneaker store in front,
oh, do you?
cannabis in the back.
Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you bite into one of these muffins, I don't know if you're gonna chip a tooth, but it's the cannabis next door that people go to. So, I mean, we're talking a lot of, for law enforcement to really have dedicated services that we've been begging for, and I know little by little, the city council and electeds are kind of catching up to it, but it's still killing us. The third thing is, actually what Valerie said, we just wanted a timeline and some guidelines of the CB members kind of getting roll-off dates, anticipated roll-off dates. And I guess we talked about it, but I think more of a firm of who's going where and when. And then the last thing I will mention, I think we'll talk more about this a little bit in the future, because it's an escalating issue for us, but it's seen our parks being used, unintended use and nefarious use in our parks more and more now. Especially we're seeing that with the opening of schools. And we're getting a lot of calls from PTAs and schools and parents. And that's been we're seeing a tough issue for us on what's going on in our parks overnight or opening and closing. And it's something we're kind of having to deal with, that maybe the borough president can help with us in parks.
Great.
On that one, but that's pretty much it. Like I said, it's a lot of what others have said and are feeling the same.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Before we move on, I will just quickly show where you can get some of this information on our website in terms of sorry. So if you go to community boards, and then you go to your board, we have an embedded Airtable
Yes.
that does have the year in which someone was first appointed. So if that's helpful in any way, I know it's not the exact info you're looking for, but it can be helpful if you have somebody who's been on.
We were using that over the summer and it had not been updated for our most recent members.
So it hasn't been updated for most recent members, thank you, because the website is also getting a little bit of a refresh. So we were just recently in a content freeze. We couldn't upload anything new because we would have probably lost it as they were updating the website. So I'm gonna have new rosters up there probably in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
Todd, before we jump to CB5, I know, Valerie, you have a
Yeah, I have
hard
to-
stop if it's
Would you
okay.
mind? Todd,
Give me-
if I may- Okay, thank you. We had our first, we had our full board meeting last night, so, and it was rather lengthy, as Eric knows, because he had the privilege of just having to watch it from Zoom. But, a couple of things. The good news is, we're having our art fair this Saturday from 11 to 4 at James Cagney Plaza, which is on East 91st Street between First and Second Avenue. We're expecting about 100 artists. And we try to do this twice a year. One time we focus on crafts and the next time arts. And so we're really looking forward to it. The weather's supposed to be good. So if you're looking for something to do other than the San Gennaro Feast downtown, come up to the art fair. We try to focus on local artists first, but you know, everyone is welcome. And I think we have about 100 people signed up. So it's really fascinating and it's a fun time. So we would hope you'd come. We also have coming up on September 25th, an educational forum on the New York Equal Rights Amendment that's going to be on the ballot. It's not any kind of advocacy thing, but I would just say if you're going to vote on that, you have to flip your ballot. So don't forget about that. And then we have a voting reform, October 17th, I believe, to talk about what actually is on the ballot, including the charter revision. So we have that upcoming. We actually weighed in, we had somebody from the IBO the first time. I think we're either gonna do like somebody from the mayor's office and maybe one of the council people just to talk about the various pros and cons, but that's still in the works, so I'll let you know. We had 2 public hearings last night. One went really long. We had an approval for yet our 15th private club on the Upper East Side. We had a roof extension. It was all about a roof extension, but I will just say they spent $50 million on the building. It's 854 Fifth Avenue, probably won't be open to members until 2027. But it's one of the last Gilded Age mansions. So the interiors are going to be quite spectacular when they're restored. And we at least got them, I think, to agree that they will open the club several times a year to the public. So that can be something that can be enjoyed by as many New Yorkers as can go through. So we were pretty happy about that. We also had, just in terms of land use, the reapproval of a extension of a term of a variance permitting commercial use for what would have been a residential building, really a stable. But interestingly enough, the first time it was granted was back in 1946. And one of the questions we had was, this is supposed to be revocable and we've been doing it every 10 years. Like, what's the purpose of it being revocable at some point when it's been around this way? But apparently, that's just the way it is. So interestingly enough, we had also our elections committee voted on last night. We don't have a nominating committee anymore. We have an elections committee. And so we have 5 people and they set up the process. We take questions collectively from the board and people to ask candidates. And so we're in that process and we have our election in November. So that's underway. I did just want to comment on the term limits. We already have double chairs for every committee. And so try to staff those with new and old people. But I think that our workaround for term limits is the use of the public member. I think we're going to try to get everyone has to roll off to try to stay on as a public member. We were allowed at least one. And we also have changed our bylaws that allow the public member to vote as a regular member of the committee for purposes of moving a resolution to the full board. They can't vote at the full board, but they can vote in the committee. And so to keep that going, also, we use that as a training ground to recruit new members. And we had a new member appointed yesterday who's been on our landmarks committee. And also what we're going to do in terms of landmarks is I'm going to use a full land use meeting, which people have to attend. That's that's a meeting of the whole of our board to have the past chair of landmarks and the two current chairs actually talk about landmarks, because we feel like we had 6 landmark applications last night on our full board. And we're feeling like new members really don't understand the importance of landmarks. And we think it'll be something that at least we can have this one meeting where hopefully most of our board shows up, but also something that we can keep in perpetuity for people to watch as they come on to learn about the importance of landmarks in our district. Transportation, we had yet another tabled resolution on congestion pricing and where it should go. When it was tabled, that's our version of the pause on our resolution. Street life, we had a bunch of cannabis. We talked about that. Parks and waterfront. This is an interesting problem that we're having. I don't know about you guys, but pickleball has become the bane of our existence. We actually had an assault on the pickleball court between two adverse pickleball groups. And I know, yes, and the police were called and it was a whole brouhaha to the point where now if people don't start behaving and being civil towards one another, the plug may be pulled on pickleball. So I think that's enough alliteration on that. But yeah, it's a real issue. I think I just want to mention e-vehicle safety. I don't know if the EFSA, which is a citywide group, the e-vehicle safety alliance, they're going to be having their town hall meeting. There are 2 bills in the city council that are up, and they talk about registration of e-vehicles. And so if I can float around the information about their town hall, but one of them is intros 0060-2024, which bans e-bikes and motorized e-vehicles from the parks, because we're seeing that in Central Park and we really want that to stop, at least in our district. And then there's another to register all motorized scooters and to require a highly visible plate to provide accountability. So I'll forward that around to everyone. And then lastly, I think today in the city council, a resolution is being heard that's been put forward by Julie Menon to encourage the state government to allow Roosevelt Islanders to vote for representatives on the REAC board. REAC is a unique situation. It's one of the 2 communities that have this operating company, and there really is no elected representation for anyone who lives on the island on that board. So we're trying to get that done. And thank you, and I appreciate you letting me jump ahead. I appreciate that. Thank you. That's it.
Yeah, please.
So we also just wrote a letter on e-bikes in parks. We don't have a part of Central Park in our district, but we do have the southwest corner of the entrance where all the e-bikes kind of gather. And we said that we're very concerned. I don't know if anyone else is aware of this, but e-bikes were not allowed, or scooters are not allowed in parks. And the mayor is doing a pilot program for certain parks and gateways to allow them. So I don't know if the borough, if Mark has come out on anything on that.
Specific to this, I don't, but I'd have to check with our policy director.
Okay, so we just had a letter too, saying we're very, very concerned about this quote unquote pilot program.
Yeah.
So if you need.
And HRP, Hudson River Park Advisory Council has gone on record talking about this numerous times, because motorized, e-bikes and are not allowed in Hudson River Park, in the park itself, but they come off the greenway where they're not supposed to be to start with and do shoot through the park. So yeah, which is, and we also have that same issue down on the Battery. So a large convergence of all of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And city bikes.
Yeah.
Motorized city bikes.
All right. Thank you for that. Just something that you mentioned, that we are trying our best to fill vacancies on boards right now. So happy to get you a new member. CP7 just got a new member. The one thing I will mention is some of them, a good number of them that we still have our council member nominations. So we're having those conversations with them. We're waiting for responses on who those nominees will be, and we'll be able to move forward with some of those other vacancies. So I think in the case of like CV2 as an example, I think 2 vacancies that you may have right now are council member nominations. So once we have those, we'll be able to move forward. Yeah, Tom.
Right, and I'm sure Marissa has been in touch with you from Brad, but we have, I believe, 5 vacancies.
Wow.
So we need new members,
Yeah.
especially with the cafes and dispensaries. Our committees are just shrinking.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. And actually, Todd, I'll pass it to you if you want to.
Yeah.
Report.
So I'll try to be brief. Some of the things that I had in my report have already been mentioned, or I've mentioned. So again, our community board has had almost 50, somewhere between 30 and 50% turnover. So it's led us to really try to reinvent how we run our board and knit ourselves together again. I mentioned already the team building effort that we had. For the other boards, I think that's really important. You just had it on Tuesday of this week. It was wildly successful. You know, we had a lot of discord in our board, and now everybody's really getting to know each other, and you know, we're getting back to work. So that's really great, building a new cohesive board. Another thing that this has led us to do, because we have all these new members, we thought it was an appropriate time to review our bylaws, which hadn't been done in 20 years. There was a lot of talk and discussion, you know, based on the new members coming in. They didn't understand the point and the meaning. A lot of the older bylaws, you know, the older members felt that they were okay. But, you know, again, with new people coming in, this was the perfect time to review it. So I'm actually on that committee. It's a good cross section. We have new members, we have old members who are doing a benchmarking of all the Manhattan community boards, big grid, you know, what everybody's doing. It's got 99 areas of concern, and, you know, we're trying to fit. We actually, part of this, I looked at all of the other Manhattan community boards bylaws and, you know, how they did things, right? So I'd be happy to share that. And, you know, some of the things, I mean, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. It would be great if there was a master benchmarking spreadsheet that showed how everybody was approaching things. Every community board has its own culture, but, you know, to the extent that we have standards and we know what our neighbors are doing, that's really helpful. So that's, you know, that's ongoing. So taking into account best practices of other boards, standards of leadership, you know, what we're going to do about term limits. I mentioned some of the things we're considering, and that has already been mentioned. We're reviewing our board election procedures, what the time is. You know, we do our elections in June. Maybe it would be better to do them at some other time. You know, we've been looking at what the other boards are doing. And then, of course, getting new members in the pathway to leadership and the requirements and experience.
Great.
As far as the wider board, for me and the people in our SLAP committee, I chaired the Open Restaurants Task Force, and I'm also on the Cannabis Task Force with Catherine Ellington. We didn't have the summer off, right? We were we were so busy, you know, doing reviews. One thing I'll mention is that Janice and I worked very hard on creating some electronic matrix standards for doing the cafe reviews. It would be interesting to see what everybody else is using. So I had actually created one with my task force that we were using, but when we finally got the thing that's being sent out by DOT, we changed it. So the questions that the teams do tie directly into the forms that the DOT uses, and it's, you know, online. Yeah.
How are you using that in relation to the biggest issue that we're seeing and we're having is the DOT process is completely separate from the SLA process. The SLA process can be before, during, after, and the crossover to try and not have the applicant come to you twice because they're not going to, 3 times, 4 times. So how are you linking the two based on time?
What we're doing is when we do the due diligence, the first thing we ask is, you know, are you going to have your outdoor cafe? Are you going to serve liquor there? We try to ask them, you know, the same kind of questions that we would ask it that would come up at, you know, the liquor license review. So, you know, they're going to have to amend And, you know, we try to get them to commit about hours of operation and timing. Even one of the sore points with us, which I'm gonna mention, is that the DOT, and this came up during the gestation of the new schema, is they feel no compunction about agreeing to the stipulations and the affidavits, right? But yet, when they come back for the liquor license review, yes, there are gonna be stipulations and affidavits. So we try to educate. I must say that most of the due diligences that we've done, we've met with many, Janice and I have gone out ourselves to do these reviews. And we've emphasized this points, and, you know, some of it is smoke and mirrors in terms of how we present it. We try to persuade the applicants that it's in their best interest to pin these things down now. And we've actually been able to get them to agree to our standards as to hours of operation. You know, a lot of these places that are applying have been around, are good operators, and we've had some success doing that. But we do have these new forms. I'd be very interested to see what other people are doing. You know, we'd be happy to share our forms with what you people are doing. The big thing is to have these forms so our teams can go out and work very effectively. The big issue, you know, to me, you know, I spent a lot of time studying the open restaurants schema and regulatory situations developed, is the DOT. It doesn't really have any kind of holistic view of, other than first come, first serve, and do you meet the requirements, right? As to how the injection of all of these cafes into a given street or discrete neighborhood are going to impact over time, right? So, you know, that is always something that our community board and our SLAP committee has always given credence to. And, you know, we've tried to put that in our comments when we make them, even if they're not going to be honored. You know, my position has always been that our role is advisory. If they don't listen, that's their prerogative, but it's also our prerogative to use the bully pulpit to put these things into the record. So we'll have to see how that plays out, you know, over time as things develop. You know, I'd be happy, or I think we should, as community, as fellow community boards, be on the same page about this, and maybe we can share information and come to a common position that's relevant. I mentioned the affidavit and steps, you know, that whole issue. I've appeared at council hearings and raised that issue. I do think that DOT, the new agency that they're building, they don't necessarily see yet the value of working of what we do. I mean, they pay lip service to it, but they don't necessarily give credence that it deserves. The SLA, at least our relationship with the SLA of many years, has proven that we make their job easier, right? When we work with them. So that's something that's going to play out over time. I would hope that if we work in good faith and give them, you know, very well considered reviews, they'll come to see the value. Ideally, what I've argued when I've had the chance is that the two should have a complementary and synergistic relationship, you know, for that to work. Another thing that our community board has done, we just purchased 2 new owls, if you know what that is. So again, this is a big thing for us, right? You know, with the hybrid meetings, the old owls were barely mediocre in terms of the hybrid and the Zoom meetings that we have. I think it's important that we have some standards. Maybe the borough president's office or all of us can get together and we can come up with some standards given the budgetary realities of what is the recommended equipment, right? And do some training on how to use these things. You know, because it's often the case that we have to move around where we do the meetings, you know. So these are the recommended purchases. This is how much it costs. This is how you use them.
Yeah, and I will just double check, just so you know, I know we did an OWL training previously, so I will see if that was recorded and if there's something I can share.
Right, because you know, they come out with upgrades to the OWL.
Of course.
You know, so we need to know about that.
You're also welcome to come to any CB1, come visit us. We use them every single week.
We do too.
Right, I think, oh, let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. I think I hit on almost everything, the holistic elements, the affidavits and STIPs, complementary, the illegal dispensaries, right? I was talking before the meeting about that. It's so important that the illegal dispensaries and the efforts to, shut them down and padlock them, be ongoing. And,
And I have the note to see if we can get them to come to.
yes, and I said from the very beginning, because we did have some of our own meetings, some of the officials from DOT. And I think even the NYPD showed up. This was before they changed the law and allowed the padlock, right? So now they can padlock, and we're beginning to hear about, the workarounds that, these places are coming up with.
Great.
Okay, that's
Thank
all
you.
I got.
Thank you, Tim.
One,
Yeah.
one quick comment, we, at CB2, we're actually seeing dining out NYC applications faster at SLA. They're not being reviewed for the dining out portion, but for any portion, like in terms of the hours and whatnot, we do ask for the dining out NYC application before it's referred from DOT from the applicant, and we found also the site plan gets updated there, but then we found that when DOT refers the application, we then have to kind of over several emails, get them to take the updated, refer us the package with the updated site plan. So
Before that you even get it, you're
Yeah.
reaching out to the establishment.
we'll see it from the SLA, and our SLA chair, Donna Raftery, also sits on our outdoor dining working group. So her and I work together on getting, we see those applications ahead of time, but then they can't go to the SLA with their application for dining out until it's been heard by DOT. So it's this kind of a little bit backwards.
Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested to hear the comments from all of you. It was an article, I think it was in the New York Times, where the smaller establishments complained that the reason that they weren't re-upping was because they could not afford the cost of the new, instead of the sheds, now you have mobile, lightweight furniture and bollards and everything. And they could not afford the cost of setting it up, breaking it down, and purchasing the new furniture and the new equipment, in addition to the very good point you made of, the incredibly high failure rate. Right. So I'm just wondering, I've been living in the neighborhood for 30 years. I know a lot of the establishment owners, and a lot of them have said that to me. They've said, you know what, Todd, it's just too expensive, right? And, that's not a good look, right? The idea that only the rich or the very large establishments can take advantage of the open restaurant programs, right? That, this new schema, that's not a good look for us, right? There's gotta be some way, where the smaller establishments can participate in it. And it's not something that's gonna discriminate.
Thanks. I'll pass it to Sandy.
One thing, looking at bylaws, just last night at exec, we passed a resolution, still before full board, that no longer has a difference between absent and excused. You're absent. There's no other option. And that means that at the end of the year or, regular time periods, we'll look at people's attendance. But it was a robust discussion. We've had it so that we have lots of people asking to be excused, and it was up to the chair to decide, which didn't seem like, so that's one of the changes.
So you're saying that it's either or?
No, if you're not there, you're absent.
Okay, so it's just the right one.
So there's
Not
no
there.
extraordinary circumstances.
There's no
No,
excuse.
well, you have a waiver to attend remotely under the open meetings law,
Don't
right?
confuse-
Qualified disability.
Excuse me.
No.
Don't
Sorry.
confuse the being on Zoom with being absent from a meeting. If you're on Zoom, you're there. That has nothing to do with extraordinary circumstances or things like that. That's a completely different issue. It's just whether you are physically at the meeting or you're attending through Zoom. If you are present.
Yeah.
And you're not excused. Or we used to have excused versus absent.
Oh, yeah.
There was the same confusion in our meeting.
Yeah, no,
Like,
got it.
totally understood.
You're either in or you're out.
You're there or
And-
you're not, you know, and it was surprising how many people had a first discussion.
For. Yeah, we don't have excuse. I think you're absent. Although I think we did when somebody went to the hospital.
They could, you know, at the end of
That's
the
an
year.
extraordinary
it was
circumstance. at that
15
point.
That's
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
extraordinary circumstance.
That's the way it was.
Okay, got it.
I'm always surprised at how many differences there are in elections through the boards. We do it quite differently. And I think it might, you know, it would be interesting to have the borough president just go through and see how many different ways there are, and maybe there's a.
How do you do it different? How? Rock,
We
paper,
haven't-
scissors or? no,
The the board selects an election committee. The election committee runs the election based on what we've done previously. We have a document that they follow. And then we have an election in November, and there's no pre-selection, there's no.
Ours is the same way. We have a nominating election committee. It's the same group that they volunteer to do that. You can't run for a position if you're on that. They solicit the board. Our elections are in June, which I think is really, me personally, I've run several, but I think it's not the right timing because you get new board members who have no idea what's going on with anything and they vote. But nobody wanted to move ours. I thought we should be aligned with what a lot of the other boards do for November, because that gives new members a chance to get to know the board and understand what's going on. June, July, September.
Yeah. And we took nominating out of the name because they don't nominate. So they're just the election committee. People nominate themselves. Or they're nominated for.
What is the sentiment about having a nominating committee in terms of screening and making recommendations?
We don't,
Muscle.
we found that unnecessary and kind of undemocratic.
Is that the general sentiment?
Yeah, we
It
just
seems
have
like
an
most
election
boards have the
committee.
election.
That an election committee that runs a nominating process from the floor of the full board, where people nominate and second and those folks are nominated and elected. The next election is the following month.
The sentiment among most of us is that the nominating committee shouldn't make recommendations.
It
No.
becomes kind of exclusionary.
We unfortunately.
Oh.
We have a nominating committee, though they don't nominate people. People just put their name in the, in the ring if they want to.
Yeah.
But there is an interview process with the nominating committee, and then they come out and say who the nominating committee recommends. Which really hasn't been contentious in our CB, really in any recent time, but.
We no longer have a nominating committee. The last time we had one was in 2018, which was, I actually served on it. I was the first. And that's back when our elections were in the fall. Now our elections are in March with the nomination period happening. So.
Yeah, our rule is that within 10 days of being nominated, 10 business days, the nominees all put forward a 500-word essay arguing their position and giving some background. And then those are circulated to the full board well before the vote. So everyone has information on who's running.
Thanks.
We had two ULERPs approved with modifications, and one of the modifications was asking for a study of locations for affordable housing in our district. We realized that we as a board can't do that, but that we felt it was really important because these are two city-owned sites, no affordable housing, although they were rezoned. So they have to have mandatory inclusionary housing, but because there's no housing, doesn't kick in. We are looking at scaffolding in our district, and I was wondering how other community boards are dealing with this. We have all kinds of laws, but it's very difficult, it seems, to actually get the scaffolding down. And we're wondering if other boards have had any success with that. We can do that offline later.
tons of 311 complaints is the only thing that I know has gotten any attention from DOB and District Service County.
So maybe we target one particular site, we announce it at board, we try and get, great, thank you. We passed a resolution asking for a study of a busway on 34th Street, and this is really in response to the 14th Street busway. We realize our fellow community boards 5 and 4, and we need to look into that.
On what street, I'm sorry?
34th. The Mount Sinai Beth Israel, the lawsuit is continuing. We still don't know for sure if they will be closing. It does not look hopeful. FDR study, we're continuing to look for support for that. We hope to be presenting to CB8 and CB3. We're not here right now, but
Can we coordinate? We did mention it in DOT. And we mentioned it in our Parks Committee. We just kind of referenced your reason.
that would be excellent. Thank you. We're happy to come.
Great.
Thank you. And I think that's it for CSOs.
Thank you, Sandy. Pass it to Beverly.
First, thanks to Mark and to you, Eric, for filling our vacancy, our one vacancy. We're very appreciative of that. And have connected with the recipient last night.
Great.
Our annual elections are October 1st, in our regular full board. We did nominations in September. As I will be running unopposed for my third and last term, the vice chair position has become highly contentious. We will play that out over the next weeks. We are continuing, I guess, slow movement on the proposed ULURP that we entered into with Landmark West for the APC site between 65th and 66th, and between Columbus and Central Park West, virtually almost the whole block there, and are in discussions with Excel, who's the owner, who wants to build a 1,200-foot tower there. And if there is no additional agreement with him, or our ULURP isn't certified as by city planning, you could do that as of right. For reasons we're not totally clear on, city planning has not agreed over a period of 6 months to certify basically a complete ULURP. So we are in complicated discussions, both with city planning and with the owner.
What about mayor's office?
Yeah, that may be the next step. There was an unfortunate incident at our last full board meeting on a landmark application for a building that Bard Graduate School is renovating on West 86th Street. We had to close our offices where we were holding our board meeting to additional members of the public because of fire laws. We were way over capacity, and a group got very disgruntled over that and stormed the building and roughed up one member of our staff. And we're doing a lot of thinking about preventive measures to prevent any such incident in the future. We're in the final stages of work on our district needs and budget requests. In terms of thinking about leadership development going forward, we anticipate that 14 board members among our most senior and experienced will be entering their last term starting in the spring. We have a structure that has sort of helped. We have co-chairs for every committee, and for the last 2 years, I've been purposely putting a new member and an experienced member together in those positions. We have 4-year term limits for chair positions that have also led to significant turnover. But I think we need to up our game in terms of thinking about formal work to prepare for that eventuality. Our board has had strong negative views on public members for a long time, because in the past, when we did have public members and they were voters on committees, a lot of them didn't show up and we had trouble meeting quorum. So I think that the carrot of having a possible avenue for departing board members leaving because of term limits, as public members may in fact change points of view very rapidly on this, but I would want to put in place limits on both the number and how those folks are chosen. And I've reached out to the Borough President's office to review a potential scheme for how to do that.
For public members?
For public members, to have them nominated by the committee chairs and appointed by the chair, and have the number limited across the board.
We have an I'm happy you can take a look at the application we have on CB1. We actually did a full application.
I'd like to say that.
And it used to be a little bit more loosey-goosey on CB1, where people were just like, yeah, they can be a public member, but all public members are approved in the fall by the chair, period. And every public member has to renew and their attendance is evaluated. If they don't come.
Right. And I would say if you miss three meetings, you don't get renewed, period. That was part of the scheme. So I will be putting that forward as a bylaws revision in the fall, as one of the things that we do to try to, again, work out a system of knowledge management for institutional history. We've done a lot to put things online as well. All of our resolutions are online. But there's lots more that we could do so that issues that recur or that have a history with us are not so opaque. I was interested, this is something I'm encouraging our board to look at, but we haven't yet done so, issue of animal rescue, which was a topic of a lengthy city council hearing a few days ago. Low cost spay neuter services are a huge need across the city. There's one such facility now in Brooklyn, nothing in Manhattan, and many certainly given the stresses of large numbers of our community who are food insecure themselves, it's not surprising that there are a lot of abandoned animals showing up in the city. And I'd like to get some interest in passing a resolution to begin to address those problems. I think that's probably it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I think with that, I will take a motion to conclude the meeting. Does anybody have anything that they wanted to add? I had messaged Xavier to let me know when they were available. Xavier, are you there? And if so, did you want to give a report?
Yes, hi. Sorry, it's still dealing with things out here. I'll make it brief. Welcome back, everyone, to term. Hearing a lot about the issues with term limits and making sure we're maintaining institutional knowledge. I know that's something that we took a concerted effort with our appointment of new chairs and vice chairs. This cycle, we had people who were very seasoned move from one committee to another and then take on a vice chair who they are mentoring, who will have the opportunity to learn and grow. When it comes to other issues, when it comes to landmarks, I've heard that echoed, and our ULURP process, that is something we've been using Airtable and are trying to find our newer members to say, listen, you need to absorb all of this and then engage us with any questions. And it's been a challenge, I think, for all of us. And I think we will be having, I think it's next cycle, we're going to have people who it'll be their last appointment. I think I'm maybe among those. I'm not sure. I have to double check. Elections, we don't have until 2025. So that's a nice thing. And we are currently engaging with the DA's office. He had given a presentation, I think it was either June or May, dealing with discovery reform and some of the challenges they're facing as they run out of runway, and attending the 25th Precinct Council meeting last night. A lot of those recommendations from the DA's office would actually help cure many of the issues within CB11. We have our executive committee meeting tonight and full board. We're in our ULA process with the Beacon project. I'll go into more detail on that after we've had our public hearing. Additionally, the statement of district needs and budget, we're in the thick of it. Our vice chair the board is now taking on that role as the chair of that statement of district needs and budget committee. Jessica Elliott, very proud after she did great work on environment, open space and parks. We are also engaging through CCOP, DCOP, our TA presidents at NYCHA to have a tour of NYCHA premises so that many of our board members will get a better understanding of the reality of public housing. Oftentimes we have had a tenuous relationship with much of our NYCHA leaders and wanting to allow access, but we have, through the development, my personal relationships with many of the TA leaders, they're welcoming our board members getting more involved and getting out into the fields. And to that end, speaking of fields, Randall's Island Park Alliance, we finally, despite not having a single response to dealing with the HERC, that is there is the migrant shelter that was at capacity at 3,000. We finally got a commitment to have that reduced, I think, by 30% by February, I think, in the coming months, and they're looking to cycle down that site. However, we were a little dismayed that OMB does not want to restore, despite it being committed to previously in writing. They do not want to restore the grounds fully. And that's a problem for a lot of us. As someone who uses Randall's Island quite often, I can tell you that I've encouraged many of our board members, and we're going to insist that they start walking on that pathway, because a lot of the complaints with safety and lack of use are real for all of us. So again, these are some of the challenges we're facing with this administration, yet we keep extending our hand. But at some point, something's got to give. And then the last bit, when it comes to sanitation, still in negotiations and trying to get the consolidated garage for districts 10 and 11, despite getting pushed back. But we have proposed recommendations through our collaboration with George Janes. And there is a site that actually would work on Randall's Island. It's an acre lot right near the fire department's training grounds that could be built to consolidate and be used for, keeping some of the garbage out of the neighborhood. So that's really it for now. I look forward to seeing all of you in October, and thank you for your understanding.
Thanks, Xavier. All right, so I think with that, I will now take a motion to conclude the meeting.
So.
Second, all in favor? Great. Thank you all so much. Appreciate the feedback. As I said, I will still take any recommendations for speakers or anyone else that we'd love to have a presentation on. I want to start lining them up as soon as possible, so.
I also want everybody to double check the rules, because the term limits, I don't think the term limits, the way some other boards are interpreting them, are exactly correct. Because as a long-term board member who's been on for a really long time, there were variances made for people who were, for people who were appointed when already on board for community boards the year that it passed. So there wouldn't be a giant dump in 2027.
Right, they're staggered.
There's a staggered.
There's a staggered
Very
piece.
staggered.
And I will just also add to that. So we're working on some, like, not necessarily a one pager, maybe a little bit more than that, but working with our general counsel to create some sort of guidance on this. And also we're trying to make sure that we answer some like frequently asked questions. So like if I was a mid-year appointment, if, for whatever reason, any kind of questions that we're thinking of, we're also trying to get clarity on that. So hopefully we'll be able to share something in like the near future.
I can share with you what Tommy, the old